Hi there and welcome to the first ACL update for 2022. And I know it's crazy, but if you look at your calendar, you'll notice that it's the 1st of February. I don't know what happened to January. I'm not sure what happened to December. It's just blurring past. There's been so much going on. We really hope that you had a great time off. And it's great to have you back with us. And also the wonderful Wendy Francis, our National Director for Politics. Wendy, you've had some time off, but it's been a bit interrupted. We've been talking about the Religious Discrimination Bill all up to the end of last year. You didn't get an enormous break from that over the Christmas period. There have been Senate Select Committee hearings and things like that. Welcome back to 2022. Give us a sense of what your break has been like and what's happening with the Religious Discrimination Bill.
Yes, thank you. It's really good to be back, but it is amazing to be here in February already. Look, every Queenslander, when they can, they head to the beach, and we were no exception. So we headed to the beach as much as we could over the Christmas break, and that was lovely. But as you say, the Religious Discrimination Bill was really a hot topic over Christmas and the New Year for us. There were two inquiries that we had to present at in Canberra. I presented at one, and Dan Flynn, our Deputy Director, presented at the other. And look, that is an ongoing thing, but it's coming close to a really crucial time in this debate. So what's happening at the moment is that we are still really hopeful that a religious discrimination bill will get passed when Parliament resumes next week. The committees are reporting by the end of this week, and you know, it is a really important bill. You've got to understand that 70% of Australians actually identify as religious. So this affects the majority, by far and away the majority of Australians. And yet without this bill, many are surprised or even shocked to know that in places like in New South Wales or even South Australia, you can actually legally put up a sign outside your restaurant saying no Hindus welcome, or Muslims not allowed, or Christians please stay away, sort of thing. That is a shocking reality. But there is much more deeper stuff that needs to be fixed about this bill. There is a lot at stake here. And probably the most important thing that's at stake is for religious schools, Christian schools, who are really in the firing line over whether or not they can preference employees when they're employing somebody who aligns with their faith. So this is it's crazy, really, because it's illogical, Alister, that a political party would have no problem being able to preference who they employ, and yet there are people who are arguing that religious schools and Christian schools in particular will not be able to preference who they employ. And so it's really important, I think, and I'm sorry I'm taking a little bit of time over this, but I think it's really important for people who are listening to understand that what this discrimination bill is and what it isn't, because it just deals with religious discrimination. It does not amend any other federal discrimination law. So all the protected attributes that are already protected, such as race, sex, gender identity, disability, none of that is changed. So to be really clear, this bill has no effect on state or territory laws in respect of discrimination, particularly against LGBTI students. Neither does it give anyone the right to speak without consequence. There are so many things in this bill that would mean that there can't be any workplace bullying, for instance. No employee would have the right to insult their employer or work colleagues or even clients. It doesn't give a religious person the right to disobey an employer's reasonable and lawful direction. And it doesn't even allow any statement that would harm a person's reputation. So there are all these caveats, and there is no way that this is an unreasonable bill. This is a reasonable bill. It simply affords religious Australians the same right as every other Australian, and that is the right not to be discriminated against on the basis of their beliefs. Yeah.
Now, John Steenhoff, the principal lawyer at HRLA, was also with Dan Flynn, with the ACL's Dan Flynn, in one of the Senate committee hearings. He also spoke to us last year, and he made the point it's an unremarkable bill. It's really bringing religious discrimination up along a sort of a similar level of consideration as any other type of discrimination. And in that sense, it really is unremarkable. But there has been a smear campaign. There has been an attempt to say all sorts of nonsense about it. I do want to point out, though, and I think it's interesting that both the two primary parties, the Labor and the Liberal Party, are in principle agreed that it's a good thing, that it's a reasonable thing. It seems to me that there are sort of skirmishes along the way to a bill of some kind, but really we're asking for the bare minimum of what would constitute a vaguely decent bill. We would hope to see better in the longer term. But all right, let's leave it there. We're really looking forward to what happens, early in February as some further things are developing there. Just quickly, Wendy, there's been a bit of talk about online safety for children over this Christmas, January break as well. Just bring us up to speed on what's happening there.
Yeah, so everybody listening who knows me would know that this has been something that's really been on my radar, but also the entire staff of ACL's radar for many years, and that is the safety of children, particularly online. And we have been particularly wanting children to be protected from pornography online. So the good news is that Australia's Online Safety Act has come into effect just this month, actually. And so what it has done is that it's given the e-safety commissioner greater powers to police the internet. And so changes included are like a world first, actually, cyber abuse takedown scheme. So it's aimed at better protecting children and adults, particularly from online bullying. But the what alarms me, I guess, is that the e-safety commissioner has still said that they won't go looking for abuse. They will only act when it is reported. And there still is no action on the age verification scheme that the government actually recommended in their report that is titled Protecting the Age of Innocence. And I've talked about this before as well. And sadly, when Australia's e-safety commissioner, Julian Grant, when she spoke on this, she actually spoke about the sex industry and said that she wants to see a flourishing sex industry online, and she doesn't want that to be affected, but she does want to protect children. Well, I would say you can't necessarily have feet in both sides of that camp. And so sadly, the e-safety commission are not even acting on the government's recommendations about online age verification systems. And so this is also despite one of the other things that the e-safety commissioner said about this over the break was that there has been their research, so the e-safety's research themselves has shown a 650% increase in child sexual abuse material over the COVID lockdown period. And so this is hugely concerning and I guess really sad for those of us who have been really advocating for some good move in this space, and we're seeing just incremental moves when really so much more needs to be done.
Yeah, so just for those of you watching, just catch that. In the last roughly 24 months, a 650% increase in child sexual abuse material content on Instagram alone.
Yes, that's
during
right.
During the COVID lockdown.
That's
All right,
right.
so watch this space, folks. It looks like the ACL is going to have to really put our foot down. You, friends, are going to have to work with us to put your foot down and make it really clear to the e-safety commissioner what we want, to the government at large, whichever government we get post-May, post-federal election, and that's going to be an area of campaigning. And I should also add that, yes, there is an election coming. In all likelihood, it's one of those first Saturdays of May. And Wendy, just flagging that because we need to get around the states now, but I just wanted to say, folks, look out. We will be doing some sort of an expose, some sort of a dedicated show talking about how the political system works. There's some nuance and detail this time around, some interesting observations to make about how this election is likely to play out. Is that a fair call?
That is an absolute fair call, and I think, I love your idea. That'd be great. I think people want to know. They want to know often from us how to vote. We can't really tell you how to vote, but we can tell you the importance of your vote and how to make it count.
Great. Great. Okay, so watch this space. We have Jasmine Yuen, State Coordinator for Victoria. Jasmine, thank you for holding on. Jasmine, you've got to do a school run in just a moment. We're recording this in the afternoon, so I'm really grateful for you standing by. And I know we've only got a few minutes with you. The headline for Victoria at the moment as we come into the new year is the Victorian Conversion Therapy Bill. It was a bill, it's now a law, and it comes into effect on the 17th of this month. So we're barely just a bit more than 2 weeks away. Now, we've been circulating a flyer, and Jasmine, you are remarkable. Victoria is head and shoulders above every other state in flyer distribution right now. Look, there are other state directors waiting to come on to talk to us, so they know the challenge is there to meet it. You have distributed over 1 million flyers talking about this legislation, explaining in very, very careful words and certainly no discriminatory language or nonsense, despite what some people tell us, but just getting the word out there to parents about how it impinges on basic parental rights. So that's the flyer, but even more important than that, we've got this bill coming out on the 17th of this month, the law, I should say. What's it going to do, and what might you have our ACL supporters reflecting on, in Victoria at least?
Yes, thank you, Alister. So let me give you an update. If you all remember, this is the flyer that Alister talked about. So to date, we should have already letterbox 1.1 million flyers.
Wonderful.
In most of the electorates in Victoria. So I would really want to say thank you to all those volunteers who are helping out, especially during the Christmas break and the New Year break as well. So we are basically officially wrapping up, not doing any letterboxing anymore. So the last day is the 31st of January. And we really need to have people taking a break and prepare for election. But things is not stopping there. I have recently have a legal advice about this flyer. Before that, we thought that when the law comes into effect, it is going to be illegal. But that is not the case. What it means is that this flyer is still legal to use. And I would say from now on until the next Victorian election in November, there is still so much opportunity and so important to get this message out. As Alister said just now, it is really telling parents what is happening, how it is going to impact their family, their parental rights, and also their children. So I would say make good use of these few months to make people know. Now, when we talk about letterboxing, we are going to, you know, this flyer is going to people's household, in non-Christians families, in whoever, in the community that we don't know. But now we are talking about opportunity of private conversation. That means telling your family's members, your friends who might or might not be Christians, they still need to know about that. Now, if you have flyers in hand, just use them. It is still legal to use. Make good use of it. But if you don't, we actually have digital version, not only in English, but also in Chinese, Vietnamese, Arabic. I think that few languages. You can download it. We'll find a way for you to download it and then put it in your phone, handy. Whenever you meet up with someone, your friend, your family members, tell them this is what's happening. And you know, who knows, you are making a very important changes there. Who knows, you can shift the vote in the state election. So don't give up the opportunity and the time just yet. But I do want to flag that the conversation will have to change when the law comes into place. There is a few things. Now, just take note. There are two things at least that we can't do. We can't directly pray or ask someone to change or suppress their sexuality, homosexuality, or their gender, or they want to change gender. We can't directly pray over that or ask them to change or suppress that. And secondly, we can't advertise it. So this is obvious. This is not an advertisement flyer. Sure. What we need to only do is to use this as an information, sharing information. So if we just keep in mind these 2 points, we will be safe. We won't get into trouble. Now, of course, we can do what we can do. We can tell someone what we believe. And we can also tell someone what the Bible teaches. So if we can stick to that, keep it neutral statement, and not asking people to change or suppress their sexuality, that will be fine. So I would say there is still a lot of opportunity to do. But bear in mind, we are not sharing this with the LGBTIQ community, but the main target group is your family and friends. Yep. But of course, if the Lord opened up opportunity for you to engage with a LGBTIQ people or the activists, I think bear in mind, be respectful. This is a scripture that I want to share before I wrap up. That is from Peter, 1 Peter chapter 3, that say, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But this is what we always neglect. Listen to this. It continues to say, but do this with gentleness and respect. I think this is a time when this law come into effect. It opened up an opportunity for us as Christians to discuss this kind of issue is really sensitive. But it opens up an opportunity for us to discuss this issue with respect. And that is what we really need to learn.
And I think it's also in Scripture that it's, cunning as serpents and innocent as doves. Wendy, I'm just mindful, before Jasmine leaves, this is actually technically not just impacting Victorians. Maybe you can just speak to that.
No, that's correct, because if somebody
Wendy?
in Queensland... Jazz, I cut across you then. So if someone in Queensland says something that is picked up in Victoria and is seen as somehow coercing that person to change their identity, then that person in Queensland, because this is a criminal offence, that person in Queensland or any other state is also liable under this law. So it is not just affecting Victorians, it affects every single Australian.
Yeah, be very mindful if it's over Zoom, over a mobile conversation, if they are trying to change or suppress that person's sexuality, they could still get into trouble.
Okay. All right. Look, and Jasmine, this is definitely going to be a big deal, or it's going to be a part of it anyway, when it comes to our strategy and our approach to the Victorian election, which is in November. Jasmine, you've got kids to pick up from school, so I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
All right. No worries. We're going to move across to New South Wales. Nikki, Ben, you've been busy in the last week. You've been a part of the Download, which is a program that we run for 18 to 25-year-olds. That was in Canberra. Canberra is on your turf. And Nikki, you're the New South Wales State Coordinator, and in that capacity, you came and talked about what the ACL sort of emerging grassroots movement is all about, and you did excellently there. But if we can just take a moment to talk about voluntary assisted dying, there's a report that's due on the 22nd of February. They may possibly vote as well. Could you just give us a sense of what's happening on that typically very consequential topic?
Yeah, so obviously, as when we had the inquiry sitting, ACL Christopher Bro here represented us on December 10, and that report is due on the first day of sitting on February 22. Now, they could possibly vote for this bill in the upper house. As we all know, or for those that don't know, it's passed the lower house. 52 MPs voted for it, 32 against. And so now it's sitting with this report. It's going to be voted on by the upper house. And this is where we're reaching out to our supporters in New South Wales. It's our last opportunity to really stand up for life and let them know that we really value that life, and life is sacred, and all those sorts of stuff. So yeah, we will be sending out an email to all of our supporters, and you could use that to write to the upper house members in the New South Wales Parliament.
Wonderful. So Wendy, we're readying that campaign now. I'm guessing it'll be ready in a few days' time.
Yeah, we are. So we've done this sort of campaign in other states as well, and so we're ready to go. But Nikki's she's just such a good advocate in New South Wales, and as you say, at the Download, she was brilliant. So we're just very grateful to have you, Nikki. But this is a big issue. When we're talking about life issues like this is a core issue for ACL and for our supporters. And so, God bless you, Nikki.
Thank you so much, guys.
Good on you, Nikki. Okay, well, look, we're coming into the home straight. We've got about 10, 11 minutes left for this. Christopher Bro here, State Director in South Australia, who also has state responsibilities in Tasmania and the ACT, but he's capable of it. He can do it. Welcome back to 2022, Christopher. Good to have you. As regards South Australia, clearly the big news is the state election, which is on I'm going to say the 17th of March, but I'm probably wrong. Did I get that right?
19th, I think.
19th, I beg your pardon, 19th of March.
So
I should have been looking
the
at the SA Votes website, savotes.org.au. Yes, Wendy.
I was going to say that's not the only thing you got wrong, because he's also the Northern Territory Director. So I just need to correct you as we're going to Alister. I just don't want falsehoods going out. You said ACT.
I'm sorry. Look, I got it half right. It was a territory, all right? I got halfway there.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So, yes, the SA election is coming up. There's a website there, savotes.org.au. But, Christopher, take us into really what's happening with the South Australian election. It's a bit of a unique experience.
Yes, thanks, Alister, and Happy New Year to you and to Wendy and all the listeners and watchers. So we've hit the ground running into the state election campaign, which, as we said, is on the 19th of March. So we're styling this as the life election. That's because you'll remember that in about February last year, the South Australian Parliament voted for to permit abortion to birth. It's interesting because before the last election, we wrote to the then Attorney General and asked her this question: given the advances in medical science mean that children are now capable of being born alive at 24 weeks, is there any plan to change the current law which says that after 28 weeks there's a presumption that they're being able to be born alive? And Vicky Chapman, the Attorney General, replied, and I quote, "The Marshall Liberal government will not be introducing legislation on this issue." Now, we know what happened, of course, and that is that the Attorney General spearheaded a movement to bring in abortion to birth, and the legislation was passed, and there was some fierce fighting and opposition to that, but it passed. As we've said, it was the best of the bad bills because we got some really significant amendments, but we can't tell people how to vote, but we want to remind people from now to election, and we've been doing that actually since the bill passed, of the people who voted to allow the killing of viable, healthy babies in the womb. You have to say it as bluntly as that. So we're going to we have a website which will tell people how people voted on that issue, both the good guys and the bad guys. We will have people ringing in to both supporters and the general public, and just reminding people of that this is what parliamentarians did. Before that vote, we did a survey, a poll, and about 65 to 68% of South Australians did not want abortion to birth. The MPs who voted for it, 26 of them ignored that. Now is the time to make sure that they are not able to ignore it, because you have a vote. Only 3% of Australians generally vote on abortion, life issues. That must change in this election. This election is not Liberal or Labor on this life issue, because people from both sides voted for life. So this is the remarkable fact. The Liberal Attorney General and the Premier voted for abortion to birth. The Labour leader voted for the amendment to restrict abortion to birth. That's a massive thing.
It is.
The only woman who voted against the bill was a Labour woman, and only, I think, 2 women, a Liberal woman, Caroline Parr, and a Labour woman, Andrea Michaels, voted to restrict abortion to birth. Now, they have to be commended for that. And the leaders of the side of life were David Spears, a Liberal minister, and Steve Murray, a Liberal backbencher, and Tom Kutsentonis and Stephen Mulligan, 2 Labour frontbenchers. So this is an election to forget about parties. This is an election to think about how your members voted, and think about that as you come to vote. And we're going to putting out lots of information. The SA Votes website is currently under construction, and we're putting in the content, and it'll be live from next week. There'll be a lot of information there. You can go on and find out how your members voted. So that's the big issue. And there are some members in marginal seats who voted against the Spears Amendment. Richard Harvey in Newland is on 0.1%, about 25 votes. Rachel Sanderson in the seat of Adelaide, she's on about 1%, about 250 votes. Leon Bignell from the Labour side in the seat of Mawson, he's on about 175 votes. They all voted to allow the killing of healthy, viable babies. Think about that when you hold your pencil in your hand and you come to vote.
Yeah.
So
I think, Christopher, love Wendy's comment on this. This shift, or this real, we need to focus on individuals, their values, their voting records for legislation. We're not thinking party politics necessarily anymore. Maybe just speak to that, Wendy.
So the major parties will always try and tell us that we are voting on parties, and I agree with Christopher just 100%. And I think that this South Australian election is going to play into even the federal election, and we need to take some of the learnings that we're learning from Christopher on this into the federal election as well, because we are getting to the stage where we need to see what the individual members are actually voting, because they're the ones who are voting on our behalf. They're the ones who are speaking for us. We are voting for them. We're not voting for the Prime Minister or even the Premier. We are voting for individual people who are speaking on our behalf. And I love Christopher's approach on this, and I'm just excited to see how we can actually make a real difference for life in this election.
Yeah, and we're calling bluff to this concept that you have to vote for a party. Yes, there's a political dynamic at play in terms of certain parties having enough of a majority in a two-party preferred scenario to always sort of end up coming into a relatively strong position. But we really do think there's great merit in you voting according to your values, voting according to your conscience, looking for individual candidates. Consider their parties, but look at those individual candidates and honour them, particularly, Christopher, as you were saying, honouring people who stood for life.
That's right, Alister. And there's a unique thing in the South Australian election in that there are 3 ex-Liberals who are now independents who all voted to restrict late-term abortion. That is Fraser Ellis in the seat of Naranga in the country, Sam DeLuc in the seat of Waite in the city, and Dan Cregan in the seat of Cavell in the Adelaide Hills. If those 3 people get back in, there could well be a minority government of either persuasion, and those 3 independents who voted to restrict late-term abortion will hold the balance of power, and they could exercise quite a bit of clout in the next 4 years. So that's a very important micro detail in this election. The next big issue in this election is the upper house. And there's one final seat in the upper house where John Darley, who I don't think will be contesting this election, his seat's up for grabs. And there are some very good pro-life parties who are contesting that seat. So there's One Nation, led by Jennifer Game, and I've spoken to her, spent a lot of time with her. She's spoken at one of our rallies. She's solid on these issues. There's the Family First Party. Tom Kenyon will be the lead candidate, and Deepa Matthew, I think her name is, will be the second candidate. They're solid. I've worked with Tom on the pro-life issue for the last 2 years, and they're going to be solid. Then there's Bob Day's Australia Family Party. So if one of those parties get that final seat, that'll shift in the upper house the movement towards us, towards life. And the overall plan, and what I've been praying for, is a more pro-life, pro-truth parliament. So there are some key MPs in the upper house, Dennis Hood from the Liberals, Tang No from the Labour Party, who need to get back in. They've been solid. And if we can shift that upper house towards us, that's going to be significant for the 4 years to come.
Thank you, Christopher. Look, we'll draw a close on South Australia there. I'm really grateful for your time today. So really the takeaways there are we're encouraging you to vote your values. We would, as the ACL, never tell you who to vote for, but we'll give you a framework for how to consider those candidates very thoughtfully. That will all be on the SA Votes website, both in terms of the upper house concerns that you shared there, Christopher, and the lower house as well. Sorry, I had an alarm going off on my screen. Thank you, Christopher. South Australia, Tasmania, and the Northern Territory as well. Wendy, as we come to a close, just good to get back in the saddle. Good to start doing these shows again. What have we got look forward to next week?
Well, actually, I would have loved time to do it today because they've already put their feet under the desks. But we've got a couple of new state coordinators that I would love to introduce. So we'll do that next week. We've got a Queensland coordinator, Tamara, and we've got a Tasmania and South Australia coordinator who's Sarah, and they are brilliant young women. And so I'd love to start our meeting next week, or our video next week, of introducing them, if that's all right. And then we'll also have a number of updates on what we've just spoken about today as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, look, Wendy, it's been delightful again. Great to have the state leaders as well. Folks, we look forward to seeing you again next week. If you're in South Australia, check out the savotes.org.au website. If you're in Victoria, maybe consider some of those flyers and leaflets. But we'll be back this time next week. Great to have you. Thank you so much.